hopefully. Yet before such epic-making transformations of history can occur, societies and poets have to be ready for the event. Ready, one might say, for heroic sacrifice. Highlight this. Culturally, the epic imagination requires communities with a mythic sense of identity, their tribal memory preserving the heroic past as legend, as if not as conscious guide. Poetically, it demands bards are poets, who can create within themselves, first of all, conscious memories of the heroic past, sufficient for envisioning their people's role in the ongoing process of history and so ensuring their immortality as nations. Keep highlighting. But memory is painful, both for the community and the poet. It is surcharged with images of lost and forsaken ideals, so its retrieval is not without some risk. Stop. Okay, I'm going to use my example that I always use because I think I know the most about this. And, well, I know the most that you guys might know as well. But the example of Martin Luther King Jr. as the epic hero. So he stands between two worlds. Okay, and she's going to talk about this a little bit later. But he stands between pushing his society, his people forward, okay, and the structure that's trying to hold the society back, okay? So he's standing, like, if you imagine his feet, like, metaphorically in chaos, which is trying to push the society forward and back in the Jim Crow South, okay, or America of the early 20th century. So it says that he has to bring, if we use him as an example, memory is painful both for the community and the poet. It is charged with images of lost and forsaken ideals. So to go back and retrieve those lost ideals from the African community from the past and to bring them into the future is not without risk. Okay? Because the terror of history has its own perils. So to bring all those the memory of the slave trade and slavery itself, to bring that all into play and to bring all those memories up, some people don't want that to happen. Some people just want to leave that all in the past. And he says, this is hard to think about, but for us to move forward, we have to think about this. And he also, I don't know if you knew this, but the day before he died, he kind of predicted it. So he knew that he was going to die. The April 3rd, he died on April 4th, 1968, but on April 3rd, he was giving, he was a preacher, he was giving a sermon at a church, and he said, I have been to the mountaintop, and I have seen the other side, but I will not get there with you. So he's kind of like, even, like if you think of he's going up the mountain, but he's not gonna be able to come down with the people, okay? Because he feels like this, he just feels like he's going to die, and he does the next day. There's a whole YouTube song, or a whole U2 song about it. Sunday, Bloody Sunday, it's called. I think it's called that. Oh, no. It's In the Name of Love. Sorry. Sunday, Bloody Sunday is something else. My bad. I'm just thinking out loud. Okay. The historical moment can never in its entirety be anything but tragic, pathetic, unjust, chaotic, and as any moment that heralds the final catastrophe must be. Highlight this. But the epic poet creates a hero who defies this final end. The poet sees his society, as I said before, standing between two worlds. It is his difficult and dearly bought achievement in the midst of the violence of the past and the terrors of the unknown future to apprehend, as Marathon expresses it, the movement of slow deliverance by the invisible potencies of truth and justice and love in action in the mass which goes counter to them. Stop. So if we use King as our example again, he did say at one time, the movement of justice, the arc of the moral universe is long and it bends towards justice. That's exactly what Jacques Maritain says here, the movement of slow deliverance by the potencies of truth, justice, and love. So both of these thinkers are saying that there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but I may not see it with you. That we're going to get there, but it may take a really long time, but it'll eventually will happen. Because in looking at it this way, we're trying to pursue our divinity, our godlike status, to be as close to that place of perfection, the New Jerusalem, as we can. Does that make sense? I mean, I know it's a lot. It's a lot of metaphor to like wrap your head around, but I'm trying to make it real by using the real world examples. You could also use someone like Katniss Everdeen as an example. So she's trying to make things better for the people in her district and the other districts. She's having to fight against the power and money, though, of the capital. And she does offer herself up as sacrifice, right? Or as tribute. She doesn't actually die, but you can see she's carrying painful memories of the past into what she has to do to help her people, right? So if any of you familiar with the Hunger Games, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Top of 5. Hence, in this work of recovering a past which, though worthy of reverence, is almost certain to be, or has already been overturned, highlight this. The epic imagination is pulled 2 ways, toward death and birth, and engaged in a double mode of vision, both elegiac and prophetic. Stop. Okay, so prophecy is to move forward into an unknown future. You've heard of prophecy. That's where prophetic comes from. You've heard of a prophet, someone who can tell the future. So the epic is moving towards prophecy, towards the future that is unknown, but it's also pulled back by elegy. And elegy means, if you'll circle that word, it's the lament of death. So it means to cry over death. That's what lament means. So the epic hero is sad. I mean, if you take Aeneas from the Aeneid, the prophecy of the gods is for Aeneas to go found the new Rome, the new Troy, going to be called Rome. Aeneas is arising out of the ashes of the Trojan War, right? The city of Troy has just been destroyed by the Greeks. Yes, Tien, yep. Man foreshadowed his own death, yes. Sorry, I got sidetracked by the chat. So, Aeneas is told by the gods, you have to travel down the shores from Troy down to Italy, and you have to found this new place. It's going to be called Rome, okay? But he's coming from the burnt city of Troy, and he's taking his father on his back. His mother has died. He's carrying his father on his back, and all the people who survived the Trojan War are following him. So he's carrying with him that painful memory of losing the war, but he's going forward into this place that the gods have commanded him to go. Okay? So kind of like Odysseus, he does the same thing. He has to carry the memories of the war, and he's got to try and get home. Okay. Its endeavor is to tell a story in which a people honor and sin against their gods. We all do this. One in which they transcend ordinary limits, and in telling the story, and in the telling, to create a world large enough to contain the full dimensions of the story. Highlight this. This viewing of the old sacred pattern from an unfamiliar perspective reshapes the myth, bringing into being a new reality. So, in America, we're sort of at an epic moment right now, where there are groups of people working to reshape the stories that are being told in America. And I'm sure I don't have to say it out loud, but you can think about all of these things that are carrying a history of darkness or like unfreedoms with it, and trying to move into a vision of the future that is more encompassing for all people. So you see how difficult that is. You're stuck in this space where some people want to stay back, some people want to move forward, but the only way it just keeps on ticking. Like the movement of the clock doesn't stop. So these new perspectives, new people come in and reshape that myth, the story. They reshape the story. Some people like it, some people don't, but you can't please everybody. And the epic hero is really going against the grain. Okay? Okay, Susan Longer wrote of the epic that it is not merely a receptacle of old symbols, namely those of myth, but is itself a new symbolic form with great with possibilities, ready to take meanings and express ideas that have had no vehicle before. Okay, so again, you take this old myth, you infuse it with new meanings, and you give it a new vehicle. You say, here's the stuff from the old car, put it in the new car, okay? You give it a new vehicle, and so maybe the old car was broken, but the things inside of it are still worthy. I'm sure you've seen your parents trade in a car, right? They get all the stuff out of their car, the old car, because the old car's broken, but the stuff in there they still want. They put it in the new car, and they're able to take it forward. Make sense? Okay. This new form, capable of accommodating the layered dimensions of time and space, is a poetic cosmos that, true to a specific epoch, which means, if you'll circle that E-P-O-C-H, it means a specific period of time, and a particular people, nevertheless allows sufficient room for the poet to trace the ineluctable, circle that, movement toward universal order implied in human events. Stop. Or if you were you highlighting? Sky? Were you highlighting? Okay. So circle ineluctable, and it means inescapable. So what Dr. Cowan is saying here is that there's an inescapable movement of human events. It just is what it is, and you can try and hold it back, but it's gonna pull hard. Okay, it's gonna move whether you like it or not. It establishes the mundus imaginalis, circle that. This is the mind's imagination. So in this imagination reside Plato's ideal realm. I'll stop for a second, you guys are still writing. Mind's imagination. The universal qualities that make up the human condition. It is the glory of the poetic cosmos, however, to show these, circle the word verities in action, embedded in matter, bearing the weight and expressing the hope of the finite order. Verities are virtues. What are virtues? Someone said yesterday they're basically morals, and that's right. So what she's saying here is that you must have an epic space, the whole space, to be able to show the virtues. Okay, you kind of like the old idea of you have to show me that you're good. You can't just say you're good. I can't just see the inner parts of workings of your soul and say, oh yeah, for sure, Victoria's a great person. How do you know? I don't know, I can just tell. Well, maybe I can tell because I'm good with stuff like that, but other people might need to see her do some work. Okay? You see what I'm saying? Like, I can say I'm a teacher and I can say I'm doing all the things, but unless I actually teach this class through whatever medium, I'm not really a teacher. I'm just saying I'm a teacher. I have to do the things that make me a teacher. You have to do the things that make you a student. So some people are saying in the chat, what are we supposed to highlight? Mundus imaginalis, and it does mean mind's imagination. Yes. And then verities, those mean virtues. And virtues are basically morals. But morals is kind of a slippery slope because we can start bringing in virtues are things like patience, love, justice, faithfulness, those kinds of things. Morals are oftentimes dependent on a culture, but virtues aren't. They're usually pretty steadfast. Who is the finite order? Humans. We are the finite order. Who is the infinite order? Gods. So if you think of this as an XY axis, you have humans on a horizontal scale, okay? You have birth and you have death. But gods don't have that. They have this up and down that is infinite. So you could say the human scale is horizontal. The God scale, the divine scale is this. It's a vertical scale. It can go as high as the heavens and as low as the depths of Tartarus, hell, whatever you want to call it, the abyss. Okay? But unless, what she's saying here, what Dr. Cowan's saying here is, unless you have the gods inserted into the action, all you have is birth to death. And you don't have anything divine inside of that life. Because humans we can't make things divine. We think we can. That's where we're at. We think we're gods. We're not. We're trying to be gods, and it's okay if we're trying to be gods, because we're trying to be better. But we can't be the God. We can't, the world doesn't revolve around us. Although, also, I'm not a preacher. I'm just trying to re-articulate what she is saying here, okay? All right. Without the epic, the virtues, can only be known in the depths of the heart as in lyric, or as an incomplete and closed in space, such as those presented in tragedy and comedy. Speaking of the sense of totality possible to poetry, Gaston Bachelard has maintained a particular cosmos, highlight this, a particular cosmos forms around a particular image as soon as the poet gives the image the destiny of grandeur. What does that mean? Well, you take a random football game, and the gods have chosen to interject themselves into the game. Why? Because Matthew Lopez, the quarterback for Fossil Ridge High School, says, "Dear Lord Jesus, please help me win this game. Please help me guide my team to victory." And if he believes that the gods come in and do that, then it's epic. You take a little tiny event, a random high school football game, someone has asked for the gods' help, the gods say yes, boom, it's epic. Okay? That's what it says. That's what she's saying, or Gaston Bachelard. A particular cosmos forms around an image, the image of the high school football game, and the poet or the author gives it grandness. Okay? You've all seen Friday Night Lights. That's what happened with that show. You take this random high school football team, and all of a sudden they become these epic heroes because someone has chosen to write about them and make them grand and show their whole life story that revolves around football. Okay? Such grandeur, as I've been attempting to show, keep highlighting, as I have been attempting to show, stems less from a glamorizing of events than from an envisioning of the human lot itself as full of splendid purpose. It is the making of a cosmos open to both intellectual and affective apprehension that, Bachelard says, poetry is a synthesizing force for human existence. Okay. So, as long as God is involved, it is epic. Yeah, Brianna, basically. Now, Brianna, if you think God's involved,